Welcome everyone back to another episode of Bits and Bytes. We are now on season 2 and episode 3. Today we have an interesting guest here named Zainen Suzuki joining us. But before we get into the formal introductions, of course, just like all of our episodes, we have a new dish that we wanted to introduce to the audience as a representation of Vancouver City and how much diversity that we have here. So today we have Lebanese food. So this is typically eaten during breakfast times, but it is served all day. So the two dishes that we have here, one is called za'atar manouche, and then the other one is lambi ahin. I may be butchering these names, so apologies in advance. But just to get a little bit into what these dishes are. So za'atar actually means like a mixture of like culinary herbs, spices, and in this case, it is kind of ground up into a paste and spread over a flatbread. So it is a vegetarian dish that we have here. And as you can see inside, there's like some sesame seeds as well as herbs that are kind of ground into it. The other version that we have here is as I mentioned, lambi ahin. So this is a minced beef flavored flatbread. So as you can see here, it has some beef as well as a bit of spices as well. So we're going to give it a try and share our thoughts on the dishes. And then, yeah.
Is this meant to be like a warm dish, cold dish?
It's supposed to be warm. So it did get a little bit cold during the delivery. Okay. But
no, that's fine.
Yeah. Usually the bread is served like freshly baked out of the oven and then they serve it hot. Sometimes they do have options to have like cheese, tomatoes, onions as well. But typically it's just served plain with the za'atar spices.
Cool. Zainen, have you ever tried this before?
I think I have. I just could not place it on where and when.
Maybe in Lebanon?
Probably not Lebanon since I've never been, but
fair enough.
I went to school with someone from Lebanon, so he might have shared some with me one time.
Okay, sweet. Nice. Well, give it a shot. See how it goes.
Which one are we starting with?
I'm going to try the meat one if you guys
I
want.
can't tell the difference. So. All right. Oh, there's some crunch in there.
Good ASMR.
There's no crunch in mine. What is happening? Did you do one of those things where you give me something different again?
No, but we could do that. We could just make it really. Oh, that's really good.
I think I got all pita, so.
No, it's really good.
Yeah, it's like super savory, and there's like a little bit of like, I don't know, is that cinnamon or something? I don't know what I'm tasting. It's like a little bit of sweetness in there too.
Yeah, are we eating the same ones?
Oh, I think so.
I need the other one.
Yes.
I guess.
We're gonna try the other one now too. So we're gonna try the one that's the just the plain spice mixture spread.
Yeah, because I'd say this one's like more muted. I haven't had the other one, but I'm assuming since you guys were all like, oh, it's full of flavor, and I'm like, this one's kind of not. But there is like kind of like a little bit of almost sour taste to it. Just a little bit, not too much. So I was very confused there for a second.
The other one's like citrusy a bit. Yeah, it's really good. I like that.
So this is meant for breakfast. Okay. I can see that.
Yeah, like this is usually for breakfast, and obviously we kind of cut down the portion size of it, but it's quite large. It's about half a pizza diameter, I would say, when it's folded over. So pretty hearty breakfast.
I can see you filling up on this for sure. I'm gonna try the other one. Which one do you like more?
They're both good for different reasons. Like, I feel like the meat one's so much more filling, whereas the other one is just very refreshing.
Yeah.
It's almost got like a tea taste in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I kind of almost want to grab like the second one because it's like breakfast for me. It's grab and go. It's not like a sit down and enjoy my flatbread kind of experience.
Yeah, it's just kind of like on the go. Yeah.
So, it's already folded in half, but you then roll it up and you just take a bite.
Yeah, and I mean, you can honestly, we have, so we got this from a place called Zatar Zay. So I think this is the one that's on Granville Street. I remember passing by it, but it's close to one of the SkyTrain stations in Vancouver downtown. So yeah, really good. Prices I think are pretty decent as well. Like definitely more on the affordable side, considering Vancouver food prices. So definitely check it out if anyone's interested in trying this dish.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I've never had that before. Thanks.
Yeah, of course. All right. So, as you mentioned, we have a guest here today, Zainen Suzuki. So, Zainen, how about you introduce yourself? Let us know a little about yourself, what you're doing right now, and we'll start from there.
Yeah. So, my name is Zainen Suzuki. I'm currently a software developer at ECAD Labs. However, software was not the place that I started, more or less. I was always interested in problem solving, but for schooling wise, I headed down the path of music, and more in particular, in opera performance. So I did my undergrad at McGill in vocal performance, where it wasn't fully opera based. It was more like art songs, so like Schubert and stuff like that. And I really enjoyed it. But once I finished my undergrad, I still thought that I could get better at singing, because only screaming pretty goes so far with not being very pretty at it. Mm-hmm. So I decided to do a master's as well, where I stayed at McGill. Like I applied to Manhattan School of Music, which I got into as well, but I didn't want to go like $150,000 in debt for a music degree. So I'm
probably a good call.
I'm okay. I'm okay. So I stayed at McGill. I did my undergrad. I did, I think, 5 operas at the school. So that's when I fully dove into like the opera world. And then since then, after I finished school, I did an opera with a company here, and then a couple solo performances. And then when COVID hit, it was already a bit of a change, but I had a pretty decent car crash as well, which stopped me from singing for a while. And then when I was like ready to get back into the world, COVID was out and about. So I'm like, okay, so maybe it's time to learn a new skill. So I went to Lighthouse Labs and did a 3-month boot camp. And then eventually, I think it was 6 months after the boot camp, I got hired with a company in Vancouver and worked as a web dev developer. And then 9 months after that, I got hired at ECAD Labs, where I started working with Web3 and Tezos tooling software.
Wow.
Yeah.
That was a lot.
I don't know where to begin. I have so many questions and so many random tidbits of jokes. But okay, so maybe let's dive a little bit deeper, because it's not every day we get an opera singer on here. Like, what kind of made you want to go into music in the first place?
I always grew up with music. Like I started playing piano when I was, I think, 3.5.
Okay.
So I started with the piano with my family, and then when I got into about grade 8 high school, I switched into voice, and then I studied voice, mainly like pop and musical theater. Okay. But when I got to grade 12, I was like, okay, if I want to actually go for studying somewhere, I need to actually do classical, because musical theater is it's good training, but it's not all-round training, whereas I'm still able to do musical theater, but I can also do opera, where it's harder to go and do musical theater and then try and do opera. So it's just more overall training. And I my grandmother was an opera singer as well, so I had a lot of music influence growing up, so I definitely stuck with it and kept through it.
And so Jean and I both have, I'm using air quotes, arts degrees, right? Hers is in English, mine is in communication. Neither of which are the art that we're talking about now, right? And I think I don't want to speak for you, but definitely when I was going through school, it always kind of felt impractical. Mm-hmm. As in the skills transferred wasn't directly to obviously what we're doing now. How was your kind of experience through university and I guess post grad with your master's? Was it much more practical because they're very singularly focused on building out your voice? Is your high school voice that much worse than your master's voice?
I would say probably miles apart, unrecognizable changes. Like there's always still like a resemblance of it, but just in terms of accuracy, quality, and confidence is just so different. Which really just took time and especially with growing up, like puberty is not very kind to the voice. So
shout out to Justin Bieber.
Yeah, so it was navigating the changes as well as like puberty is one point, but the voice changes for males up until like 27 to 29. So that's where like the voice actually becomes more mature. And it's a constantly changing thing. It's not like an instrument where it's going to stay the same over time. It may change moderately, but it's going to be a gradual change that will always kind of be in the same direction. Whereas voice, you could have a cold and then it's a fully different instrument that you're feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I know you mentioned like, you know, going to Lighthouse Labs for 3 months to do their boot camp. So like, would you say if you were to compare, like what was your day-to-day like classes look like when you were at McGill studying like, you know, music? Like, I'm just curious because I've never, you're actually the first I know that actually went to school for music. So like, what was your like day-to-day schedule look like?
For my undergrad, classes were like, my undergrad was harder than my master's by schooling wise, which is more uncommon than I would say other degrees. But in my undergrad, we had a pretty high course load of what courses we needed to do in our 4 years. At McGill, I think we were the second highest credit amount that we needed to graduate. And we would have more classes that are more like 1 or 2 credits. So there were smaller credit courses that would take less time, but still had like whatever prep amount of time that you would need in studying, and like because they were kind of isolated ones where we had like ear training where we would be given a piece of music and be like, okay, here's your note, sing it. Or here's this rhythm bars, like this set of rhythm, and just tap it out. And that's kind of what we had to do. Whereas with other ones, we would have like history. For my degree, I had to do Italian, French, and German for a year of each, as well as diction courses to be able to like speak and sing properly in that language without insulting everyone. But yeah, so we had, I like in my undergrad, my first year, I think I had 21 credits in my first semester, which the limit is 18. The minimum is 12 for a full-time student. So it was a lot of credits at the beginning, and then it tapered off like your 3rd and 4th year. But my master's, it was like maybe 3 classes a week. But the only thing is the most time-consuming parts are the rehearsals and like the practice times that we'd have to do, because we're not just there to like be able to like remember the history of music or write down the harmony of something and analyze music. It was the performance that a lot of us were there for. So regardless of all the stuff we had to learn and be able to prove that we had learned it, we had to prove that we were progressing with our instrument.
How would you compare like that workload then, the intensity compared to like Lighthouse? Because I have heard, you know, I have a couple friends that went through boot camps, and they always comment that there was always this, you know, comment that was like, it's very, very intense. Like they're like, not everyone's like set out for it. Like, and the like school environment's very different from what they were used to if they went through like college or like post-secondary, like at university. Like they said it's a very different pacing. How would you kind of compare it, and what were your thoughts on it?
From my experience with bootcamp, I thought it was really good. Like I didn't really have any bad interactions or experiences with the bootcamp. I also did mine fully remote, which I believe Lighthouse Labs is remaining, like it's going to keep remote as it. So like I found that the remote really changed my experience in comparison to like a friend of mine that also studied at Lighthouse Labs that did it in person, where they were always stressed because they were seeing like where other people were and like having that not even competition, but just feeling you're behind. Whereas since we're so remote, it's mainly our own work, and then there's like paired programming ones where it's just like we're gonna do this now regardless of whatever other work there is, and we can get through it. Like I felt like I adapted into the coding lifestyle and just logic thinking pretty well. Like I've always been like a logic based person, but in terms of like I would always ask the question of why something is this way, and that way I can more so validate why it isn't, and that really helped me get through the boot camp because I've already asked that question of why can't I do it this way, and know why I shouldn't be heading down that path, because like there's rabbit holes everywhere and you just have to learn how to jump over the right ones.
That makes sense.
That's crazy. So like what I guess people listening I think are going to be really interested, because like you've up to this point when you know obviously you were hit with a pretty rough patch in that, well, we all were in COVID. But you know, you made a pretty substantial decision to kind of, you know, stop what you were doing. And at this point, you dedicated the majority of your life to studying music, to studying voice, to studying opera, right? To transition over to that, what's the motivation and how do you kind of stick along with it? And because like you could go to culinary school, you could go do literally anything else, right? And obviously, what's the decision making behind you that made you go into software? And then as you're going through with it, like were there doubts in your mind saying like, oh, maybe this isn't for me?
Like the biggest change, like I guess the reason why I really did the switch was like, for one, I had a car crash where it knocked me out from being able to sing. Like singing is, or like a lot of things are full bodied, and the part that I damaged the most was like my lower back and pelvis area. And from that, I damaged a lot of the muscles that are used in singing. So singing was just not comfortable. And at that point, I was like, I don't like, even before leading up to this, I never knew if music would be my full career, because for one, living in Vancouver and being a musician is just not very sustainable. Like you can have like a full-time address here, but traveling around and being other places is most definitely going to be more so your life, because there's not enough music here, at least in the classical sense. So I always questioned whether or not music was going to be like my life. And when the crash happened, as well as COVID, it definitely gave me the time to like, what other things am I interested in? And I've always been interested in computers and coding and stuff. And I never really took the dive into it to learn. Like I would always download these, learn C++ on your phone. And I just, I don't know, would look at it for 5 minutes and then be like, this is too hard.
Yeah.
But the boot camp really, I felt, gave me the structure and forced me to go at a pace that I otherwise would have kind of neglected, because I'd be like interested and then I just wouldn't be interested. But since I was there to do something and to achieve something, it was something that I could dive into and actually go day to day through it. Like it was 3 months. I think they said expect about, on average, I think they were expecting people to put in about 70 hours per week. So it's 12-hour days and then 10 hours on the weekend. So at the beginning, I would say that I was more so doing around that, because I was learning so much of the fundamentals of just like how to create a variable, what a variable is, how to create a loop to iterate over it, how to make a basic program that would say hello world and still not understand what I was doing. It gave me these different things where I could see my progress over time very clearly, and it really helped me to see how much further I could potentially go with it.
Yep.
So like what you said too, like about, you know, going through your undergrad and masters, like it's like it helped, essentially the camp that you went through, it helped build up your confidence in a very progressive way.
It definitely gave me a very progressive way, because it gave you like, each week was like a milestone type thing. Each day had little milestones in it, and you would pretty much validate what you were learning as you were going, because you'd be using it regularly as you were going through. Like for music, it was a bit harder because you would have so many like going forward, then going backwards. Like the same can happen in coding, but it's like just your physical ability rather than like maybe a blocker that you have. And like the I think the largest thing that's I've heard on repeat in the tech industry is imposter syndrome,
Yes.
which it's the feeling like you're somewhere where you don't belong, and as you get more blockers that you run into, you're like, oh, why can't I do this? Why am I here? I shouldn't be here. But in reality, it's just like, it's when you get into the coding world, it's accepting that you're always going to be learning. You're never going to stop learning because tech changes so quick. You're like, a lot of places, they're trying to do a new technology. They're trying to do a new ability, that's something that hasn't happened. Other things may have happened similar to it. You just have to learn how to adapt it to what you're trying to achieve.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then those that are listening that like maybe you're considering going down the similar path as you, like what kind of advice would you have for them before they're going into boot camp or something similar to that, where it's the full commitment, it's 70-hour weeks, 3 months, but you're also learning something completely new, right? Do people just dive right in, or what advice would you have for them?
Like when I did it, I dove into Lighthouse Labs' free course, where they give you like, it's pretty. I think it's like Code Academy that they're just directing people to, where you just go through learning the basics of JavaScript and how to do things in JavaScript at a super basic level without even getting into creating projects and stuff. And that is the one that probably, like, I was thinking about going into the boot camp, but I was like, okay, maybe I should actually try and see how this goes first. And I really enjoyed the type of stuff that it was, even though it was super, super basic. It was enough to get me interested to go further and dive into a boot camp. Like, people can learn to code. Like, a lot of people are self-brought up coders, where they just have a passion for it and they just don't use a boot camp. They just go and make the things that they're kind of interested in doing. Lighthouse is just the boot camps are more so the things that will get you job ready, and that's the whole marketing behind it. It's like, we're going to have you able to go and just do a job by the end of these 3 months. You're able to apply for jobs, and you have the projects behind your back, like on your belt, that show you're able to do the things that they may need you to do. And like, yeah, a lot of bootcamp grabs, like Lighthouse Labs has a impressive hiring rate after boot camps. But it's really just a waiting game, because there's so many tech jobs that eventually you're going to get hired somewhere. And the longer you wait while applying, at least if you're coding and practicing and trying to get better and learning more, you're going to be more hireable and be seen as more than just a boot camp grad.
Yeah.
Actually, out of curiosity, because I know that, like, as you mentioned, it's about being adaptable. It's about learning and stuff. So do you think, in your thoughts, can anyone really just, decide to join a boot camp? And what about those that, they want to test the waters? Like, what if, sorry, I lost my train of thought here. Let me reword this. Okay. Actually, the direction I want to go with this is, let's say, someone went through the boot camp, they realize, hey, maybe this isn't really fit for them. Like, would you suggest that, just keep going at it? Like, do you think it's something that there's so many different languages out there, maybe they just haven't found one that they felt comfortable with? Or do you think that maybe some people just aren't fit to be in tech or becoming a developer? Or
I think if you don't enjoy logic problems, coding is like, at least if you don't like logic problems, back-end development is not for you. If you like creative development, front-end is more for you. Like, if you like styling a web page or making something that you can actually see, then it'd be more so the front end side. Like there's so many different aspects of coding that you can't just say that one thing would mean, okay, no coding for me, because there's just so many different ways to do things. Like I started my first job, I was a web developer where I was working full stack, which means I was working like the front end where you see the web page. I was working the brain behind it where it was doing everything, and I was working the database itself where it was storing and interacting with the brain. And that one I got to actually get a flavor of everything, which was really cool. But now I'm working for a company where we just create the tooling software for interacting with the Tezos web cryptocurrency and blockchain. So it's a lot different. There is no front end that we really have to deal with aside from like maybe our documentations that we hand out to people to actually know how to use our stuff. And other than that, it's just creating the logic even without an API to do all the thinking and have everything, because the API is the blockchain. So it's just we're making the stuff to handle with it properly.
I'm really glad that you brought up that, like, it's diverse. Like, it's not just, like you said, like, if you're more creative side, if you want to see the results, then yeah, there is front-end development. Or if you're, as you mentioned, more stronger in problem solving, there's back-end development. Like, there's so many different routes that you can take that, as long as you get the basics down, then the opportunities are endless. And also you did highlight a point too, where it's like, there's so many different startups, there's so many different companies, so much different tech out there that you may, there's so many different opportunities to check out. And as you go, like maybe you'll find something that you really, really like. It's really niche. Like I remember, this is kind of a little bit off topic, but I think that coding is so interesting, but there's so many possibilities with it. Like I know I came across this video where this developer was coding artwork, like, and it would be very intricate art. Like it's not, just a simple like pixelated tree or something. Like this is like art that you would probably see at a museum or a gallery. And it was just so fascinating that all of it was coded. Like it's just crazy how much how many different possibilities there are. So I'm really glad that you mentioned that, because I think a lot of people watching this, they're always kind of nervous. Like people talk about wanting to get into tech, and they're always nervous. They're like, I don't know where to start. Like, I don't know if I'm technical enough. Like, but the thing is like, like you showed yourself, like you went from music into developing, and it's a completely, opposite worlds almost. So, yeah.
So yeah, definitely wrap up those two topics. Eric Reese is one of the guys that did a lot of early digital art. So if you guys are interested in that, definitely check him out. And also just to kind of wrap up the bootcamp stuff, we do have an episode with, Karam on our other podcast, Launch AMA. So if you're interested in learning more about the bootcamp process, learning about Lighthouse Labs itself, you can go ahead and check out that episode. But kind of back to what you were talking about with software development, like knowing what you know now, like you're in, so it's not too far away. Like, are there some surprises that now you're kind of knee deep into being a developer day to day that you didn't realize, whether it's a perk or it's a negative, either or?
What I've gotten into now is like there's lots of times where I feel like I've bitten off more than I can chew. Like
the
with
imposter syndrome you talk about.
Yeah, exactly. Like with my current company, it's Web3 technology, so it's very like avant-garde. It's newly changing. It's breaking the stereotype of what is in the normal world, because it's Web3. It's going into trying to decentralize everything. And I have to interact, like, since we're an open source software and company and pretty much entire ecosystem, we interact with so many different backgrounds of like coding styles and stuff. Like I'm consistently learning every day. Like I have to, the hardest part for me right now is trying to go in, interpret and understand the things that I have no clue what it is. So like different coding languages that I just can barely recognize.
Yep.
I have to go and be like, okay, this is what's happening, I think, and then go and try and implement it in our language, or like mirror it in our language, which is TypeScript, and get it to be happy and function.
Yeah.
Because there is a validator, which is pretty much our blockchain. Whereas if it's not done properly, it's just not going to work. And we have to figure out how to recreate it in a different language. And like I should study more of the languages that I'll be coming across more, and that way it'll be an easier time. But it's just like I feel like, well, no, what really came into clarity for me was how things actually do just take time sometimes. It's not going to happen at once, like all at once. You have to actually sit and digest it and actually work at things over time that will just make your life easier. And that's the thing that I kind of didn't really understand in bootcamp, since it was already paced, I guess, at whatever it would be. Like when I got out, I was like sometimes getting frustrated, like, why can't I just do this right now? And it's just because I didn't have the fundamentals to understand and couldn't grasp that I just needed to work a little bit more at everything to understand why something couldn't be a certain way.
And would it be fair to say that a lot of what you're doing now is because you're creating net new? Like you don't know you're doing it wrong until you've done it, right? Like there's no wrong because nobody's done it. And now that it's a little bit, trial and error is like the term I'm trying to use, but I don't want to make it sound like simple, right?
Yeah.
So it's a little bit like that. And like I hear a lot around the office, something we hear often is this concept of F it, ship it. So I feel like I'm sensing a little bit of that with the work that you're working with the ECAD nowadays. Like a lot of times it's just like we have to put it out there and just run it through the validator, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's relatable.
Yeah, like we try and like we're very much a test driven company. Like we very much, we have to ensure that everything is tested and both like locally for our own system as well as externally to, like, we have how many test nets? We've got 1, 2, I think maybe 3 or 4 test nets that are like mock blockchains where it's running either the current protocol or a new protocol, since Tezos is self-amending and self-upgrading. And we have to, like, we ensure that we actually test these things against those test nets, which, like, sometimes they have bugs, so we'll make something and it's working, but when it's actually corrected by the side of the people that are actually developing it, then it's like, oh, it's not working anymore. What happened? But that's why it's so important for us to be testing, because if people are using the software that we're outputting, like, we need to have tested it to make sure that it's working properly, as well as have tests that are consistently running whenever we're doing anything. Like, we have integration tests where they're going to run every single time we make a change, and they'll make sure that it's working for whatever protocol we're currently running, or whatever protocol we're going to be running.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that you have a really unique experience of is like you didn't go to 10 years of software development and go through Web 1, Web 2. You kind of, you've been thrown in, for lack of a better term, into Web 3. There's a lot of misconceptions and probably maybe some are true, some are confused about Web 3 itself. So for the layman, for the non-developer, pretty much everybody in this room that's talking right now, like, how can you kind of basically explain like the potential impact of Web3 to I think everyday life?
That's a loaded question.
It's a loaded question, and I'm making you the face of Web3 for the next 30 seconds, right?
I'm still very new to Web3. Like, I started working in Web3 like April.
Yeah.
But yeah, Web3, it's the goal to, well, like, I guess the most basic phrase is to decentralize everything. So it's moving it away from validations by pretty much banks and things like that. Like you can have your own, or like personal identity. You can have your own identity that doesn't have to be tied to your personal identity, and then do things that way. Like there's so many different cryptocurrencies. They all work similarly, but also have their own flavors and different things. And yeah, it's just opening up potential for growth in ways that can be led by more so the community and people around the world, rather than
people that care about that subject or piece, right? Like that's the kind of concept of decentralization. I mean, on the other end, because you're new and everything is coming at you, like what questions do you have that you think we actually haven't figured out in Web3 yet? Because I think one of the catchphrases is, "Oh, we're so early," but that also means like a lot of what the potential could be isn't built or may not be built. Do you see any criticisms or questions about Web3 that you may have that you think are still valid at the moment?
I don't feel like I haven't looked into what the world is saying about Web3 enough. Like the way that I see it, Web3 is it's creating a world where there's less hands in your pocket. There's less things where people are like, I want a piece of this, or I want a piece of this, and like, no, you have to give me this if you want to have that. And like, it's making it so much more individual, and community validating what things should be and shouldn't be, at least in most web technologies or Web3 technologies. Like it's so community driven that if the community decides that they want a massive change or something, like even like with Ethereum going from proof of work to proof of stake, it's
on the day of recording, this was last night.
Yeah, this was last night. Still don't know how it's going.
It might have broken the time that we're filming this. So
yeah, but it's just it's community driven, and it can remove the people that may have like malintent because it's so community validated, and the community actually has to validate in order for it to happen. It can't just happen and then the community be like, wait, this happened.
In the ideal, in the purest form, for sure.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So I guess like we are kind of approaching our time now, so we're gonna bring up the question that we ask all of our guests. So in a particular, I guess, your situation, we can kind of think of it as like, let's say you have a startup idea, or it could just be like, the company that you're working with, if you could bring on like 2 to 3 new hires. So either scenario, what you think you're more comfortable with. But that being said, who would you bring on to join your team? They can be a celebrity, they could be a dead historian, they could be like a fictional character from a cartoon, maybe a TV show, and they can be someone that you already know. So we want to know, like, who would you bring on, and then maybe just a little tidbit about why you would specifically want to bring them onto your team.
This is the one I dreaded the most because I just don't know. Like I would definitely want like a visionary, someone that would have lots of thoughts that could be worked on to be actionable, like acted upon. Like the 3 people, I feel like a mind like Galileo, where it's someone that is constantly thinking about how to solve a problem. They think of the problem themselves and then they just go and solve it, because they're like, there's a lot of people that will go and like they'll just make stuff without really a goal in mind. And that's, I think, where a lot of things kind of end up not being as like long lasting, because it's created, but it's just created. It's not filling a purpose. Like I don't know, when a car was invented, it was to get somewhere and more efficiently than a horse. And you don't have to rest the car unless you're overheating it and destroying your car. Yeah, But yeah, like a mind like Galileo, someone that could pretty much think of things that would need to be actionable. Maybe if they're like way ahead of their time still, and just not possible. Like what he drew a helicopter with cloth and wood. That's impressive.
Sweet. So you got Galileo.
Yeah, Galileo. I feel like minds like that, as well as people with the problem solving skills to actually make it into an actionable thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like you need someone that actually has determination to go through and stick through the mud and
you need your Action Jackson.
Yeah, Action Jackson. And that's such a hard one. Dream team. Because I can't just list people. I feel like it leaves out so many other people.
Fair.
You're the guy that's like, I have 3 wishes. I wish for 3 more wishes.
Oh man, it's the burden of choice. There's a lot of amazing people out there, so it's tough.
And that's only when you're thinking about real people.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Zainen, for joining us on this episode. And I hope that, those that are listening in, I hope this was really valuable, especially if you're on the fence about, wanting to jump into the tech space. So if anyone actually wants to kind of reach out to you, if they wanted to connect with you, maybe had questions about your bootcamp experience or just wanted to chat, can they, is there any way that they can connect with you?
Yeah, and they can find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. They're all my first and last name, so it's pretty easy to find me.
Perfect. Awesome. So we'll share that then on the description page for this episode. If you want to get in contact with Zainen, feel free to send him a message.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thanks again. And thank you everyone for listening in to another episode of Bits and Bytes. We hope to see you guys all on the next month's recording. Take care.
See ya.
Thanks.